Coming up on 5 Minute News. 30 years of blah blah blah. Young activists bemoan climate inaction. Attacked by Republicans, US General Milley defends calls with China. And 37% of people have COVID symptoms 6 months after infection. It's Wednesday, September 29. I'm Anthony Davis. Environmental activist Greta Thunberg and fellow youth campaigners struck a sceptical tone for this week's climate talks in Italy, saying much has been promised but little done to tackle global warming in almost 3 decades since the landmark Earth Summit. Fears that climate change is worsening grew after a UN report in August warned the situation was dangerously close to spiralling out of control, with the world certain to face further disruptions for generations to come. 30 years of blah blah blah, Thunberg told the opening session of a Youth for Climate event on Tuesday. Thousands of young activists have converged on Milan this week, with some 400 from about 190 countries due to engage with policymakers to hammer out proposals for possible solutions. So-called leaders have cherry-picked young people to meetings like this to pretend they're listening to us, but they're not listening, Thunberg said. The youth activists who fought to get climate change to the top of the global agenda years after leaders at the 1992 Rio summit in Brazil pledged to tackle environmental problems are being challenged to help come up with the solutions ahead of the COP26 United Nations summit in November. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, US General Mark Milley, fended off perhaps the most personal and direct attacks of his career from lawmakers on Tuesday as Republicans blasted his calls with China and his interviews for books critical of Donald Trump's presidency. Milley was unshaken as Republicans called for his resignation during an already contentious hearing that was meant to focus on the chaotic US withdrawal from Afghanistan, but repeatedly swerved into questions regarding the general himself. When asked, Milley acknowledged talking to Washington Post author Bob Woodward for a book that showcased Milley's role, trying to avert a crisis over apparent Chinese fears that Trump might attack Beijing in his final months in office. The book detailed supposedly secret calls with General Li Zuocheng of the People's Liberation Army on the 30th of October 2020 and again on January 8th, and said Milley had promised to warn China first if he were ordered to attack. Milley confirmed the calls but said they were not secret to US government officials and that he was acting on instructions from some of Trump's top aides to de-escalate tensions. He acknowledged trying to send Beijing a message that we are not going to attack you, following US intelligence indicating China feared an attack. Milley said the calls fit within his mandate to ensure strategic stability. I am certain President Trump did not intend on attacking the Chinese, and it's my directed responsibility to convey presidential orders and intent, Milley told the Senate Armed Services Committee. Milley acknowledged that he also spoke on January 8th with U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who, according to the Washington Post, had asked the general what safeguards were in place to prevent an unstable president from launching a nuclear strike. Milley responded by assuring her of her safeguards and added, I am not qualified to determine the mental health of the President of the United States. Milley told the Senate Armed Services Committee, at no time was I attempting to change or influence the process, usurp authority, or insert myself into the chain of command. President Joe Biden has supported Milley throughout the controversy surrounding the calls, saying he had great confidence in him. 1 in 3 people infected with coronavirus will experience at least one symptom of long COVID, a new study suggests. Much of the existing research into the condition, a mixture of symptoms reported by people often months after they were originally ill with COVID-19, has been based either on self-reported symptoms or small studies. Now, researchers at the University of Oxford, the National Institute for Health Research and the Oxford Health Biomedical Research Centre have shed fresh light on the scale of the problem after studying more than 270,000 people recovering from coronavirus in the US. They found 37% of patients had at least one long COVID symptom, diagnosed 3 to 6 months after infection. The most common symptoms were breathing problems, abdominal symptoms, fatigue, pain, and anxiety or depression. Severity of infection, age, and sex affected the likelihood of long COVID symptoms, according to the data from US-based TriNexX Electronic Health Record Network. Long COVID symptoms were more frequent in those who'd been hospitalized, and they were slightly more common in women, the study published in the journal PLOS Medicine showed. COVID patients admitted to hospital were more likely to suffer cognitive problems like brain fog and fatigue compared with people who did not need to be admitted, the research found. People who did not need hospital care were more likely to have headaches than those who needed to be admitted. The researchers said that many patients had more than one long COVID symptom. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.